Hello and welcome to Chicago's Union Station. Today we are taking a ride on Amtrak's Illini from here down to Homewood, Illinois. Amtrak's Illini is one of 15 Amtrak services that operate out of Union Station. The Illini is the afternoon half of the Illini-Saluki pairing, which operate on the corridor between Chicago and Carbondale, Illinois. The Illini and Saluki are the only two intercity trains in the Midwest to operate with Superliner coaches, one of which is often a sleeper. We'll get into the reasoning behind this strange consist later in the video, but for now it's time to head inside. A ride out of Chicago wouldn't be complete without stopping by the main station hall. Located on the west side of the station concourse, the Great Hall spans an enormous 20,972 square feet with a vaulted skylight 115 feet above the waiting room floor. Our schedule this afternoon is pretty tight, so almost as soon as we're done admiring the main hall, it's time to head out to the tracks to meet our train. Making our way through the station and the South Concourse, we met up with the line of people heading out to track 26 for boarding. Waiting for us on track 26 is Amtrak Train 393, the Illini, led by Amtrak Midwest SC44 Charger number 4625. I say led even though the locomotive is clearly at the rear of the train, a fact that we'll touch back on here in a bit. Across the platform on track 28 is P42DC number 69, which brought the Texas Eagle in earlier that afternoon. Our ride down south on the Texas Eagle a few days later was led by this same locomotive, and if you want to check out that full ride, then click the link in the top right or in the description below. Making our way down the platform, we reach our coach and can climb aboard. Heading upstairs, we can find an empty row and get comfortable for the quick ride down south. Despite the strange train setup, the great advantage of Superliners are the amazing seats, which are super spacious. There's a solid 2 or more feet between my knees and the seat back, with more than enough space to stretch out my legs, just barely reaching under the seat in front. Each seat includes a footrest which folds down from the seat back by pressing on the lever to the side. The usual seatback pocket is decently large and includes the safety information card for our Superliner coach. Tray tables are located at each seat and fold down easily, translating towards the user for easier access. Above each row are 2 lights operated by the buttons in between, plus an attendant call button, although I doubt that would do anything on our intercity train. Outlets are located on the wall just below the windows like you would find on most Amtrak coaches. The windows include blinds to block out the sun if it's too bright, although these had begun to fall off their mounting in the track above. Seat adjustments are made via the 2 levers on the side of each seat. The top lever reclines the seat back while the bottom is used for the leg rest beneath the seat. Although it's hard to see, the seat back reclines around 20 to 25 degrees, which easily allows passengers to get comfortable. Reaching under the seat, passengers can pull out the leg rest, which ratchets into place. There are plenty of adjustment angles, allowing it to suit a variety of passenger heights. Pushing down on the bottom lever releases the locks and swings the leg rest back beneath the seat. Boarding soon wraps up and our train pulls out of Chicago, beginning our 41-minute ride down to Homewood. Before we leave Chicago behind, let's take a quick look at our route this afternoon. Heading out of Chicago, the ride is fairly normal for the first few minutes. Our train crosses the south branch of the Chicago River like most southbound trains, but right there is where the similarities end. Before boarding, I mentioned that the locomotive was at the rear of the train, and we're about to find out why. In order to connect with the correct line to Carbondale, our train has to change directions. This means reversing out of Chicago, transferring out of Amtrak's Chicago subdivision and onto the Illinois Central's Freeport sub. Our train, now with Locomotive in front, wraps north around near South Side, meeting up with the Metra Electric and South Shoreline tracks at the 18th Street station. From there, the ride is pretty standard, following the Metra Electric tracks through South Chicago, passing Hyde Park, Chatham, Roseland, Dalton, and Harvey. The final mile passes by Canadian National's Chicago Intermodal Terminal before pulling into Homewood at the end of the journey. We'll cover a rather short 24 miles on our ride today, with a travel time of 41 minutes. As always, Amtrak's Chicago Yard is the first landmark on our departure from Chicago. Here, Amtrak stores and maintains a good portion of its long-distance and Midwest fleet, as is evident by the combination of single and bi-level rolling stock. The new workhorse of Amtrak Midwest's fleet is also lying in wait here. The, at the time, new Siemens Venture coaches are all over the place here, including the yet-to-be-seen business-class cars. If you want to see an in-depth look at these new coaches, then check out our ride from Chicago to Joliet on Amtrak's Missouri River Runner. Links will be in the top right or in the description below. Our train swaps tracks just south of the river, curving its way through near South Side and onto the Metra Electric tracks. With our journey now underway, we can get up to explore our train. First things first, we need to head to the rear of the train. Crossing through the next car, we reach a locked door with a sign telling passengers that the cafe car is behind them. I'm not interested in the sign, but instead what's behind that locked door, which is a full sleeper car. Bringing up the rear of our consist is car number 32022, a Superliner 1 sleeper built by Pullman Standard. As much as I want to continue further, the locked door prevents me from doing so, which leaves us with the question, what's up with this consist? From what I can find, the entire Illini consist revolves around Canadian National's tracks and the way that their grade crossings are activated. In the past, the Illini and Saluki, the Illini sister train, ran the usual single-level Amfleets and Horizons in shorter trains. Eventually though, Canadian National began to implement a minimum axle count of 32 axles on their routes because shorter trains would often not activate crossing barriers. As a result, Amtrak began adding unnecessary coaches to consists, like baggage cars despite no checked bags, and heritage diners to make the 32 axle minimum. This was fine for a while, but Canadian National began to demand that Amtrak use Superliner cars, as the single-level equipment was not heavy enough to activate the crossing circuits. This meant that Amtrak now had to meet the axle requirement and use heavier cars, which brings us to the present. Our train today is made up of 5 Superliner coaches, 1 coach cafe car, and 1 sleeper car, plus the Charger locomotive at the front, for a grand total of exactly 32 axles. If you're enjoying the video so far, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. It's totally free and it really helps support the channel. If you're so inclined, then feel free to check out the channel's Patreon or become a channel member. Patrons and members get their names in the video, access to exclusive weekly posts, and even the opportunity to vote on future videos. If those perks pique your interest, then click the links in the top right or in the description below to learn more. Pulling a 180, we can head back to the center of the coach and make our way downstairs to the cafe. The cafe car is operated a little differently than most, as the car is a combination coach cafe car, so the cafe is downstairs where either the luggage space or extra seating would be. The facilities may be small, but the selection is still large, with plenty of options for snacks, drinks, and larger meals. The smaller cafe leaves almost no space for passengers here, and it's really expected that patrons return to their seats to dine, but there are a few seats off to the side, although I think they're really more for the cafe staff. There are also plenty of condiments and utensils for passengers, so making a meal your way seems fairly easy. I wasn't too hungry on our ride today, but I did pick up a Twix bar to snack on later. The ride south runs parallel to the South Shoreline as far as Kensington, with Metra's Electric District continuing on as far as University Park. The Electric District is Metra's only electrified line and one of only a handful of overhead electrified commuter lines in the United States. The service finds company with the likes of Northeast Corridor trains, Denver's RTD, the soon-to-come Caltrain Corridor, and of course the South Shoreline. While we cruise down the electrified corridor, let's take a look at some stats about our train and the route. Taking us down to Homewood this afternoon is Amtrak Illini number 393 and is powered by Siemens SC44 Charger locomotive number 4625. Each SC44 is powered by a Cummins 16-cylinder QSK95 engine producing 4,400 horsepower. SC44s are rated for a top speed of 125 miles an hour, but track speeds limit trains to an operational speed of 79. Amtrak's Illini and its sister train, the Saluki, operate on the 310-mile line between Chicago and Carbondale, Illinois. Travel times take an average of 5 hours and 30 minutes one way, which comes out to an average journey speed of 56.4 miles an hour, which isn't half bad for Amtrak. The line serves a total of 9 intermediate stops with 2 termini for a total of 11 stations. Originally, there was only one train operating on the line to Carbondale, and that was the Illini. It ran once daily in either direction, but in 2006, Amtrak added the Saluki. This was in response to increased demand on Amtrak Midwest trains, upping the services to twice daily. On August 21st of 2017, Amtrak ran a third intercity train on the line, the Eclipse Express, for the solar eclipse. Bathrooms on board Superliners are located downstairs, so we'll head to the center of our car and down the stairwell to find them. There are a total of 5 bathrooms on each car, which means there should always be one available. Stepping inside, we're met with a very small but functional facility. The sink works very well, with plenty of soap, cups, and paper towels. The tissues are full, but the box has yet to be opened, and there's plenty of toilet paper. The single 120-volt outlet is located next to the tissue box and appears to be working well. The bathroom was surprisingly clean, especially for a Superliner. The countertop was free of stains and there was no water on the floor as far as I could see, which was a nice change from the usual Superliner bathroom. Overall, it's small, but it's definitely nicer than I was expecting. Crossing the Little Calumet River marks our final approach into Homewood, and soon thereafter our train comes to a stop at the end of our ride. Grabbing our bag from the luggage racks overhead, we can head downstairs and out onto the platforms. There again at the rear, now front of the train, is the sleeping car. It would have been nice if Amtrak opened up the sleeper to passengers, because if they're gonna add it in the consist, then it wouldn't take much more to use it for revenue service. Yes, it would require a sleeper attendant and cleaning at either end, but the potential revenue from such a service would likely outweigh the costs. Granted, I have no idea what the costs are and if there would be any demand for it, but it's just an idea. After loading up the waiting passengers, the conductor closes the door and Amtrak 393 continues south to Carbondale. As our train leaves Homewood behind, we can head down into the tunnels below the tracks, which were pretty sketchy to say the least. The structures built above were nice and new, but the tunnels probably hadn't seen a cleaning in many years. Coming upstairs, I tried to head into the station building to wait for our train back up north. However, pulling on the door, it didn't budge. The sign to the left clearly stated that the station hours were from 4 to 9 p.m., and with our arrival at 4:45, there was no reason for the building to be closed. Assuming it was just that door that was locked, I headed around to the front of the building, only to be met with yet another locked door. The sign clearly says open from 4 to 9, and yet nothing. So on that terrible disappointment, it's time to end. Next week, we'll be back on the Northeast Corridor for a ride on MARC, the Maryland Area Regional Commuter Network from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, Maryland. If you're new around here, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. It's totally free and it really helps support the channel. I also want to give a huge shout out to my patrons and channel members. If you too want your name in the video or just want to support the channel in more ways than one, then head on over to the links in the description below. But anyways, that's all I have for today. Thanks for riding with me, and I'll see you in the next one.